My name is Marcel from rushbikes.com, and today we're going to be talking about tank liners and how to preserve your tank for years to come. The first thing that we want to do with preserving this tank and saving it is we're going to start with degreasing all the contaminants, all the gasoline, all the oils that's in this fuel tank. So we're going to start off with a degreaser, which is going to be this clean. We're going to put it in, add some hot water, cap it up on top, swish it around for about an hour. We'll swish it around every 15 minutes, and once that's done, we're gonna rinse it out, completely get it dried. Let's go ahead and begin step one on saving this tank. Okay, so right now, this is a piece of metal that we've drilled some holes through to cap off where the fuel pump connects to up top, because we're gonna be turning this gas tank around, upside down, getting it very agitated. So we're trying to keep all the fluids inside while we're doing that. So while Tony's finding some washers for me to secure this plate down, the next step is I'm gonna take some gasket maker. You can get this stuff at O'Reilly's, AutoZone, any automotive store. And basically we're gonna be making a gasket that's gonna sit over where the plate's gonna be, pop the holes in and secure this in place. This is gonna keep the liquids from running out. So now that we're fully prepared to do this tank liner, we're gonna begin with the degreasing of all the contaminants inside this gas tank. So, now this solution requires 1 bottle of the degreaser, and it also calls for another full bottle to be filled up with hot water. The great thing about this product and the way that we do the tank liners is that none of our components are corrosive to paint. So that means whether you've got a classic paint job, a custom paint job, or an OEM paint job, your paint will be safe when we're doing your tank liners. Now we're gonna apply the hot water for the degreasing mix. Next, we're gonna start screwing in our plate with our gasket on. And you wanna make sure that these screws go in straight. You definitely don't wanna strip. So now we begin shaking. Hey, before I go any further, if you have an older tank and you have a connecting fuel line down here, make sure that you cap these off to avoid any spillage. We're gonna start shaking up. We're gonna let it sit for about 5 minutes. We're gonna shake it up again, let it set for 5 minutes, shake it up again, let it set for 5 minutes, till about 35-40 minutes goes by. By that time, the degreaser should have worked its way in. We're gonna rinse it out, and we're gonna try to get any of that debris out of here before we start getting the metal etched ready for the sealer. So stay tuned. Okay, so we've been shaking this solution for about 35 minutes in hopes to get all the degreasing taken care of. We're gonna go ahead and pop this tank open, and we're gonna rinse it with water. So we're gonna save this, but you can kind of take a look in here and see what this degreaser has done. It's separated that entire liner, okay? We're gonna try to get rid of all of this liner that's no good and decaying, okay? First, what we wanna do is find a safe place with a water hose nearby, and we're gonna dump this solution into a bucket and dispose of it safely. Let's take this over to the water hose and get started on the next step. Okay, so now that we've got a safe, secure place that we can rinse this tank, I generally use high pressure whenever we're gonna be spraying this deal out. We're just gonna set that joker in there. Okay, so we're gonna be using some high pressure air to speed up the drying process. Now I have an air drying refrigerant system on my entire airline system to avoid moisture going through the lines. So you definitely don't wanna use a line that's gonna produce more moisture in here. Now you can see the water moving around in all those little crevices. It's getting moved around, it's drying up. This is exactly what we want. I'm gonna go ahead and put a zip tie on this air gun, place it inside the gas tank so that the air can circulate around for about 15 to 20 minutes. Once that's complete, I'll use a heat gun and put a heat application in here to make sure everything is dried out and everything is ready for the sealer. Okay, so everything looks really dry inside, but we're gonna take the extra step on putting a heat gun inside. This is gonna get any additional excess moisture out of this. You definitely do not want any water or any moisture in this tank whenever you're about to do the fuel tank liner. We're gonna put it on a low setting, set it in, and we're just gonna allow this heat to circulate around inside the gas tank. Now definitely don't leave the gas tank unsupervised. These heat guns do get hot. You don't wanna bubble any paint. If you feel like it's getting a little too warm, change the position of the heat gun. be completely fine. Essentially what we're trying to do is heat this gas tank up over 100 degrees and just get everything dried out. Okay, so this gas tank is ready and dried. One of the steps that we take to get any excess debris out of here, because this area is very dry, I'm gonna take some tape. We're gonna ball it up to have the sticky side out. I'm gonna set it right here on top. We're gonna do this a little bit further back. We're gonna be using some high air pressure to blow off any excess, tank liner or debris or whatever's in there. So we're getting a lot of particles that are getting stuck on this tape. So we'll do this as many times as it takes till the time that we're not getting any more debris on this tape. So our tank liner's looking pretty good. Our next step is to add a rust blast to neutralize the rust, as well as adding some sheetrock screws to agitate while we're shaking the gas tank. This is gonna score up the side, providing a better adhesion for the final tank liner process. Let's go ahead and open up this rust blast, add this formula in. Now this rust blast does not need to be diluted with any water. You wanna keep it 100% pure. Gonna add some sheetrock screws. All right, next we're gonna go ahead and cap up the top. So it's really simple. Shake it up, set it in one position, wait your time, shake it up, set it in another position, and move on. Okay, so after a whole lot of shaking and a little bit of waiting, it's time to remove the rust blast out of the gas tank. All right, so as you can see, it's removed and neutralized all the rust in here. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna dump this solution back into this bucket. And we can do that by removing these plugs that we put on the fuel tank. Now that we've gotten the majority of the solution out of the gas tank, just gonna cap this off for a second, and we're gonna begin removing the sheetrock screws that we put in here. All right, and the best way that I've found to remove these is gonna be a magnet. So I'm gonna reach in, move them all to the front. All right, so now that we've gotten all the screws out, we're gonna get rid of the rest of the solution in here. Now it's gonna be time to rinse this gas tank and get it ready for the sealer. So we're gonna take it over to the water hose, let water run through here, clean it all out, get as much debris out of this as possible, and we're gonna dry it out 100% until it's completely dry. We'll put an air hose in there, even a heat gun to speed up the process without damaging the paint, of course. Let's move on to the next step. Now the objective here is to get the residue from the solution that we just used completely out of here. I got my hands in here kind of rubbing up against the sides of the metal. If there's a little bit of your original tank liner left in there, it's okay. Not all of it's gonna be able to come out, but what you wanna do is get any of the loose debris, the pieces that are falling off, that's gonna be the most important. Now you wanna unplug these holes to make sure that these holes are getting all the debris out of them as well. These right here tend to build up some corrosion and some rust, just particles from the old liner. Okay, so I've rinsed this tank out a few times, dumped the water. I'm not seeing anything floating anymore. I'm seeing clear water in here, which is excellent. That's exactly what we're looking for. Okay, so in this step, we're gonna dry this gas tank completely out. And drying it out, the best way to do it is open up all the holes. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna insert some of these paper towels on the inside and get some of the really wet spots. Any sitting water that's been in there, we're gonna dry up the top, up along this ridge, along the backbone of the gas tank, up top. And what we're doing, we're just making it a little bit easier for whenever we add air and heat in here to dry up this gas tank. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and cap up these holes once again. Now we're going to seal the bottom up. The reason I use these bungs in here is because to avoid getting sealer on the threads and making it difficult for your petcock to seal back up. If you don't have it, you can use your existing, wrap a little bit of tape and put it in. Teflon tape probably be the best option. All right, so as you can see, this is what the gas tank should look like before the liner. Completely clean. It's okay if you've still got a little bit of the liner in there, but you want to make sure that there's no rust, there's no caked on areas. This is exactly the way that it should look. We want to have a cup, just an old cup that we can pour out the excess liner, so we'll set this aside. These kits come with gloves and a stir stick. This brush is gonna be important for you to remove the excess liner out of here. You don't want it caked on. You want it to make a complete pass over the metal, lay down smooth, and sometimes it's a little bit difficult. You don't want to get stuff on your arm or your hands. So what I'll do, I'll take a stir stick, grab a little tape, and basically just make an extension. We'll save this for later. Next is going to be mixing the sealer. Open this. So what we want to start off with is mixing this sealer really well. Mix this for at least about 2 minutes, making sure that everything is mixed right and getting everything off of the edge. It's a really nice color. So now that the sealer is mixed up, we're going to go ahead and pour it down the backbone of the gas tank. The backbone of the gas tank is kind of the hardest part to get, so we want to pour this over so that way whenever we're moving this tank around, it can easily run over all the pieces of metal that are necessary to be coated. All right, set that down. I went ahead and just wipe that down. Okay, so I'm gonna put on my gloves, and the first thing that I wanna do is I wanna move this tank around, like visually see the sealer being moved around in there. See how it just flows right over? We're gonna try to coat as much as we can see, so that way whenever we cap the top of this gas tank off, we're only focusing on covering the areas that we don't see. So I've got everything coated what I can visually see from the bottom to the sides. The next step is we're gonna cap off the top and we're gonna turn it upside down. We're gonna roll it to the front. We're gonna pull it to the back. We're gonna make sure that the entire internal metal on this gas tank is coated with this liner. At this point in time, I'm still gonna be using the same existing gasket, but I flipped the gasket upside down or toward the back. It's just a little bit cleaner surface. The other might have had like a little bit of debris, so we're trying to keep it as clean as possible. Okay, so now that the tank is sealed, we're gonna start by flipping it upside down. We'll let it sit there just for a few seconds, let that sealer make its way down here, and we're gonna start rolling it back and forth. Okay, so we're gonna roll forward. Now we're gonna pull it back. All right, we're gonna lay it down. What we're gonna do, we're gonna roll to the right now. Let's bring everything over here. All of the liner will stick right here, and then we'll roll it back so that way we can get the whole entire top portion right here. Okay, so we've rolled this joker around quite a bit. We're gonna go ahead and remove the screws. Just do another visual inspection that all of our liner has gotten in all the areas that it needs to be. Man, everything looks really good. I see the liner that's gotten all the way to the top. I don't see any areas that were not hit. We just have a little bit of area that we got some overflow on, so we definitely want to clean this up. Make sure it doesn't get anywhere that it's not supposed to. I want it to completely run down to this corner right here, all right? It's building up, it's running down. So basically what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take this brush and I'm gonna sop up as much as I can. We're gonna take a little bit of air, blow it in these holes. And we're gonna take these existing screws, take the 8/32 bolt, and I'm just gonna put a little bit of oil on here, okay? Not enough to where it's gonna drip down. We're just gonna hand tighten these up. So the reason I'm doing this is the oil doesn't allow the epoxy to stick to it. This is gonna preserve the threading. We may still run a tap through it if necessary. We're gonna go ahead and leave that quick connector for the petcock down below. But what we do need to do is remove these caps. You definitely don't want epoxy or your tank sealer getting stuck in here. Then you're having to try to fish some of that stuff out. You can make a visual inspection and make sure that those holes are open. I can see light through them. I can see that it's not plugged up with anything. That's all good. That's exactly what we want. This tank liner has to have the time to dry up, completely cure. A lot of people will think, oh, well, I'll set it in the sun and speed up the process. Do not do that. That is not how this tank liner is designed. It needs 72 hours in a well-ventilated, preferably an area where there's some airflow that's not gonna get pollen, dust, or dirt on the inside. So till this process is done, hang out, and I'll show you the final results. Okay guys, so it's been 72 hours, the gas tank liner is completely cured, and we are ready to install this gas tank. But before we do, we went ahead and removed the petcock quick disconnect from below. Notice that we don't have any sealer inside the threads, which is great. Connecting hose line ports are completely clear. On the screws that we put a little bit of oil on, they come out fairly easy. We're gonna run them back and forth just to make sure that when we do put this fuel pump cap back on, everything will go on really nice. Now we are gonna have to replace this gasket. So as you can see, this tank is back almost to brand new on the inside. This liner is gonna last for years. It's a really great product. One of the things I really like about this sealer is the color. Instead of having like the white cream look, some of the stuff that you can buy at some of the local motorcycle shops, this particular gas tank liner works excellent. If you have a fuel tank in need of a liner, contact rushbikes.com today and schedule an appointment.